China is on the verge of disintegrating. China's current situation does not appear to be sustainable for the foreseeable future. For them, it is merely a terrifying nightmare. People are present on the road, and there is some violence going on as well. People are incensed and enraged. The banks are freezing all of their money, and this is the cause of it. The Chinese authorities are using cunning tricks to influence the population in order to foresee all of this. But this will soon come to an end. In this video, I will demonstrate how the Chinese government and major real estate players set off a fire of hell that is quickly threatening to consume China's whole economy. Around $6 billion worth of deposits were frozen, and the result was just mayhem. People were enraged by the inability to withdraw their own money, which sparked protest. Home buyers joined them in their refusal to repay their mortgage payments, which totaled close to $300 billion overall. The situation was getting out of hand. The police were forced to do this in order to calm the situation down. A sad piece of news was revealed during an internal property meeting. Construction on 300 million square feet of real estate has also been suspended. Local governments were under pressure to deal with this, but they were unable to do so, revealing that even 200 to 300 billion yuan would not be sufficient. The number of unpaid mortgages since it began has reached an enormous total of about 2 trillion won, or about $300 billion. And this bank freeze and the mortgage freeze created something of a domino effect, as initially it was 5 banks that failed. But soon this massacre spread to 20 banks. If things continue in this way, the number will only grow, and eventually the entire banking system of China will crumble. Even the rest of the world is aware that China's social upheaval will cause the country's economy to collapse completely. This bubble of rage was being stuffed with frustration over the mismanagement and the greed of building up, which has ultimately ended in bursting in the form of protests and chaos. The boycott regarding the mortgage is not a sudden fierceness. People went insane and began buying property aggressively as the price rose day by day, oblivious to the possibility that real estate values may ever fall. After hearing the numbers, you can determine the haste. According to estimates, real estate accounts for between 70 and 80% of each citizen's wealth in China. Over time, this developed into a culture, with the younger generations growing up with the goal of owning at least one piece of real estate. It has actually been going on for years, and because of this ongoing excitement, real estate developers were able to profit. And it was at this point that the idea of pre-sale entered the market, as builders began selling homes even before clearing the ground for them. And as a result of their hysteria over the steadily growing prices, individuals have just started accepting them without question in the hopes of someday owning a home. Literally, they were paying for unrealized property. And the Chinese National Bureau of Statistics, which reports that 34.5% of the total income of the real estate development had come through pre-sales, is proof that this was a major success for the developers. The frightening part comes next. The money was not actually used by these developers to build those already sold homes. They put that cash to use by selling more pre-sale homes. With that money, they purchased an increasing amount of land and placed it up for pre-sale. It certainly sounds like a Ponzi scheme. This was going well until the buyers began to show some skepticism due to the developers' failure to deliver the homes by the promised date. And how is that possible for them? Since they were using the money for various things, they didn't even have any money left over to build the dwellings. Additional pre-sales. Only 60% of the pre-sales between 2013 and 2020 were actually built, and the boycott actually began in Henan and spread to Hunan, Hubei, Shaanxi, and Hebei, and several other towns. And guess what? Surprisingly, although most homeowners have paid off their mortgages, banks still demand full payment under the law, which makes sense. However, the government has advised its people to temporarily cease their payments, and it has also increased the interest rate on mortgages from 4.65 to 4.45. Leaving that aside, it's important to consider if every home buyer defaults on unfinished properties. The loans will lose $58 billion. However, I have one more shocking item to share with you. The Chinese government is battling with a number of issues in addition to this that threaten to topple the entire system. The Chinese government has been dismantled by the bank fraud in the Henan province. Every deceptive action taken by the CCP was intended to lessen social anxiety, but instead it heightened the tenseness. They could practically push themselves to any boundaries. Also, China could not learn to live with COVID. China has effectively not lived with COVID like the rest of the world. so there would be economic chaos if the virus were suddenly to rip through the country. Jacob Gunter, senior analyst at the Berlin-based Mercator Institute for China Studies, told DW that there is not any build-up immunity, as they refuse to import the mRNA vaccines. They do not have a very advanced healthcare system, and there is a lot of vaccine hesitancy. Worse still, the recent government crackdown on the debts of property developers sparked a real estate crash that forced one of the country's largest builders, China Evergrande, to the edge of bankruptcy. Chinese home buyers have stopped paying mortgages on unfinished apartments. Bank loan for property purchases have fallen for the first time in a decade, and the amount of residential floor space, a measure of new construction activity, dropped by nearly half in the second quarter. The economy has shown it can recover quickly from lockdowns, but the damage from falling asset prices in a sector where 30% of GDP is far more pernicious. Households, banks, and local governments all have damaged balance sheets. While refusing to unleash more monetary stimulus until inflation and the pandemic are under control, China's central bank this week slashed interest rates after industrial production and retail sales grew lower than expected, and oil demand fell 10% year-on-year in July. Pressure is already building on China's leaders after a state-backed newspaper called this week in a front-page report for new pro-growth policies. Citing Wen Bin, chief economist at China Minsheng Bank, Financial News said Beijing could use more stimulus to boost demand. Also for more industrial policies and measures for the real estate market, which is said would drive a recovery in production and consumption. Resistance to a fresh stimulus would ease in the next few months as President Xi Jinping seeks re-election as China's leader by the 20th National Congress of the Chinese Communist Party. The summit, which is due in November, according to Hong Kong newspaper Ming Pao, is likely to approve Xi's third term. Unlike 2008, when China's 4 trillion yuan monetary stimulus helped to stabilize the global economy, the impact of any future expansionary policies by Beijing is likely to be limited for the West. But they could help to ease the cost of living crisis that was hurting growth in the West. It might be safe to say that China won't rescue the global economy in this cycle. Hopes for a new commodity supercycle driven by China will be dashed. However, the focus on supply-side policies and the weakness of Chinese demand will mean China exports disinflation and even deflation to the rest of the world over the next 12 months, helping cool global inflation. We do not know what the future holds, but on behalf of present, we can definitely predict it. So comment down that what you guys are predicting to happen to China and how it will impact you and your land. We hope you guys liked the video and found this super informative. If you did, then please like this video and subscribe to this channel regarding more recent updates and more informational content. And I will see you guys in the next one. Until then, peace!